Shuffle up, roll for high, let's go. Greetings, hello and welcome to my very first Deck Tech deck profile video featuring Wyll Blade of Frontiers with the Dungeon Delver background. This video is split into multiple chapters, the timestamps for which can be found in the description down below. First off, I'm going to talk about what this deck is all about and why I built it in the first place and why you might be interested in trying it out yourself. Then a small bit about the planning phase, and information about the commanders, assembling the deck and all the cards in it, a deep dive into some combos and possibilities, as well as an even deeper deep dive into the MVP of this deck. With no further ado, let's get right into it. Let's get started with the reasons why I built this deck in the first place. Before I got into Magic the Gathering, I used to play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! But as time went on, the strategies that I liked to go for and that I fell in love with became less and less powerful due to power creep, and the game as a whole just started to feel really formulaic if you wanted to keep up with newer meta strategies. Around that time, a lot of my friends got into Magic, and I wanted to give it a try as well. And since the commander format felt like it allowed for a more forgiving and casual kind of deck building, I wanted to go all in on randomness, something that Yu-Gi-Oh! Did not really allow. Back then, other popular RNG commanders like Mr. House, President and CEO did not exist yet. And Krug the Fumbless sounded funny on paper, but I wanted to do something crazier than a simple 50-50 that you get from coin flips. Luckily, the release of the Baldur's Gate set was just around the corner, which then allowed me to convert the love that I already felt and still feel for Dungeons & Dragons into this new hobby. In the end, I decided on running Wyll Blade of Frontiers with the Dungeon Delver background, which allowed me to combine the randomness of throwing dice with the high adaptability of choosing the right path to take in the dungeon for each situation that might come up. After that, the only issue was to find a way to combine dice and dungeons into a single deck, because those mechanics don't really quite mesh that well. But this is just another reason for why I love this deck so much. It's existing for so a long time that it allowed me to learn quite a lot about deck building and when to break deck building norms that are supposedly set in stone. And trust me, you really don't want to see the first draft that I had of this deck. It was just a wild bunch of all the dungeon cards, all the dice cards, without an overarching theme that combined those two mechanics. It basically just felt like shuffling together two badly designed jumpstart packs. But I did not want to give up on this deck. And as my deck building skills grew and I got deeper and deeper into Magic, I found with a lot of experimentation the glue to finally combine those two mechanics. And this glue ended up being Enter the Battlefield effects, or ETBs for short. And I can understand that for some of you it might be really obvious to find such an overarching theme, but for me it was a really big step on my personal Magic journey, which is why this is still my favorite deck of all time and why this first deck profile video is all about this deck specifically. With all the whats and whys out of the way, let's take a look at the chosen commanders. First up, Wyll Blade of Frontiers. Wyll is a human warlock creature with 1/1 and a mana cost of 1 generic and 1 red mana. His first ability allows you to, whenever you have to roll any die for any effect, instead roll 1 additional die and then take the higher result among the two. Or in D&D terms, he grants you the advantage. His second ability has direct synergy with this. In whenever you roll any die, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on Wyll. This can make him really big really quickly. With this, taking someone out via commander damage can be a real option. Lastly, he has Choose a Background. If you should not know what this means, then please allow me a short explanation. During the deck building process, this effect allows you to pick from among all the enchantments with the background subtype one single enchantment to serve as a secondary commander. In this case, my choice falls on Dungeon Delver. This 2 mana enchantment for 1 generic and 1 blue not only serves to turn this otherwise mono red deck into a blue-red Izzet deck, but it also brings with it a very powerful ability. Like all backgrounds, Dungeon Delver as well gives our commander creature an additional ability while both are on the field. In this case, all room abilities of dungeons you own will trigger an additional time. And for those of you who are wondering what are dungeons, I have prepared something for you. Should you already know how dungeons work, or should you not be interested in a more detailed explanation of everything all around dungeons and the differences between the initiative and venturing into the dungeon, then please feel free to skip to this timestamp. First of all, here's a list of all the dungeons that you can choose from. Dungeons are a special kind of reminder token, which then allow you to trigger a bunch of different abilities over the course of the game. In order to gain access to a dungeon, you have to either play a card or activate an ability that tells you to venture into the dungeon, or you have to take or maintain the initiative, which I will get to in a second. Whenever you venture into the dungeon, if you have not entered a dungeon before, you get to choose from among the 3 original dungeons from the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set. Those dungeons are Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Tomb of Annihilation, and Lost Mine of Phandelver. But should you get your hands on the initiative, however, you then get to venture into the Undercity and the Undercity only. Before we move on with the deck list, I would also like to take a moment to explain to you the differences between taking the initiative and venturing into the dungeon. While venturing into the dungeon can only happen whenever the game tells you to, be it via a card effect or any ability, the initiative is an emblem-like ability similar to the Monarch or Day and Night cycle, and thus has to be tracked for the entire length of the game once it is introduced. As a quick side note, my personal rule of thumb is, if you introduce such a mechanic into the game, it should also be your duty to keep track of it. So, how does the initiative work? Most certainly, most players are familiar with the Monarch, where one player somehow introduces the mechanic, and then the emblem gets switched around on the field depending on which player manages to deal combat damage to the owner of the emblem. The main difference between Monarchy and the initiative is that the initiative rewards you right away whenever you take it from someone, or whenever you introduce it yourself. And additionally, you get more payback if you manage to keep hold of the initiative for an entire round and you still own it on your upkeep. With that out of the way, let's take a closer look how the dungeon and venturing through it works. Whenever the initiative triggers for you, or whenever you venture into the dungeon, if you have not entered a dungeon yet, you get to choose one from the pile. In the case of the initiative, you only get to choose the Undercity, while venturing into the dungeon only allows you to choose of the original 3 dungeons. But if you, however, already entered a dungeon before, you just proceed in whichever dungeon you are currently in. Should you then later on finish your dungeon, you are then allowed to choose a new dungeon once you get to venture into another one again. To finish this topic off, let's take a quick look at an example with the Undercity. Let's say I just took the initiative this turn. In that case, I start from the top and get to activate the secret entrance ability, which then allows me to search a basic land from my deck and put it into my hand. Now I am essentially locked into the Undercity, and both initiative and venture into the dungeon triggers would now allow me to proceed in the Undercity. With my next dungeon trigger, I then have a choice to make. As you can see, the secret entrance has 2 arrow pointers, both pointing downwards at different abilities. As I am told to venture deeper into the dungeon, I get to choose which path I would like to pick. Let's say, for this example, that one of my opponents has a strong creature out with Vigilance, which he will most likely use to take the initiative back from me next turn. In that case, I would like to pick the Forge to buff one of my creatures to either block or to be able to swing over him next turn to take the initiative back. After that, I once again have the choice of 2 different abilities. Let's say this time one of my opponents has a very scary looking flying creature, which I don't want to come at me. So this time I will choose the arena and goad that creature. From here, most players would most likely go on with the archives to draw an additional card. And finally, after a lot of turns, a lot of defending and a lot of aggressively taking the initiative back, you now get to reap your reward with the final and strongest dungeon step. For the Undercity, this allows you to reveal the top 10 cards of your library and then choose a creature among them and put it onto the field with 3 +1/+1 counters, as well as gaining hexproof for 1 entire turn cycle. Only at that point it once again matters whether or not you are asked to take the initiative or to venture to the dungeon. But no matter which of the two happens, you then still start over from the top. One thing to keep in mind here is that with the initiative, your opponents also get to reap the rewards of all the different rooms. But this is where the Dungeon Delver background kicks in, with it doubling all of the rewards just for you. With all of that complicated stuff out of the way, let's take a look at all the cards that make up this deck. For this segment I tried separating all the cards into different categories, but since this deck was built from the ground up to be flavorful first and foremost, a good chunk of those cards can't be sorted in just one category, but in that case I will mention it whenever it comes up. First, let's start with the cards that allow you to venture into the dungeon. First up, the Dungeon Map, a free cost mana rock which can also be tapped for another dungeon step. After that, the 1-team Malison is a small creature which can't be blocked as long as it attacks alone. This is very useful for taking back the initiative and then also getting another dungeon step after it, since it also allows you to step into the dungeon whenever it deals damage. Coming up third, we have the Eccentric Apprentice, a small flying creature with an ETB that gives you another dungeon step and the ability to turn any creature into a small 1/1 bird as long as you have finished a dungeon before. This effect can be very versatile, to either nullify an opposing threat or to just simply add flying to your Wyll to make him more evasive. Bar the Gate is a little bit more expensive than your regular counterspell, but at the very least this one has an additional dungeon step attached to it. Fly is a very cheap enchantment which can be used to make any of your creatures evasive in order to gain back the initiative on another player, and also getting another dungeon step out of it, since it also gives the ability to take another dungeon step whenever the enchanted creature connects. Closing out the dungeon venturing side of cards is Kick in the Door, a sorcery that buffs a creature, gives it haste, and then also lets you enter to the dungeon. To be honest, the part of not being able to be blocked by walls never came up thus far, and I highly doubt that it ever will. On the side of the initiative and the more powerful mechanic, we start with Saravok's Tome, an artifact which takes the initiative on ETB and then taps for either 1 mana or 2 mana if you have the initiative already. Alternatively, if you have already finished a dungeon before, you can pump 3 mana into it to play the next non-land card from the top of your deck for free. Secondly, Aarakocra Sneak is a small flying creature which also takes the initiative on ETB. Just like its predecessor, Blood Boil Sorcerer also takes the initiative on ETB, and while he doesn't fly, he allows you to goad enemy creatures whenever you need to redirect a threat. Another valuable piece comes in with the Stirring Bard, a 0/4 defender which takes the initiative on ETB and can be tapped to give another creature haste and menace. Next up, the Wyll Caretaker once again takes the initiative on ETB and gives you small 1/1 flying tokens whenever you have the initiative at the end of your turn. A slightly more aggressive option of taking the initiative comes with the Caves of Chaos Adventurer, a 5/3 trample creature, which allows you to play the top card of your library whenever it attacks. Additionally, if you already finished a dungeon this game, the card played this way is free. Last in this line of creatures comes the Tomb of Horrors Adventurer, with the highest mana cost but an equally powerful effect. As long as this creature is on the field, your second spell on each turn will be copied for free, and if you have completed a dungeon already, this spell is even copied twice. And last but certainly not least is Loot Dispute, the only enchantment in this line. This card promotes taking back the initiative from other players, since you get rewarded with a treasure token for attacking the current holder of the initiative. Additionally, whenever you finish any dungeon, you get to create an additional 5/5 red dragon creature with flying. After taking a look at all of the dungeon stuff, let's take a look at all of the dice cards. Starting out with all of the dice cards related to drawing cards or gaining some type of card advantage. Starting out with the real banger of a card, the Deck of Many Things. Once this hits the field for 5 mana, this then repeatedly allows you for the low cost of 2 mana and tapping it to roll a 20-sided die and then subtract the number of cards in your hand. Depending on your result, you either have to discard your hand, return a card at random from your graveyard to your hand, draw 2 cards, or you get to reanimate any creature from any opponent's graveyard, and then make that creature's owner lose the game whenever the reanimated creature dies. And let me tell you, there's no funnier way to end a game than stealing an opponent's Sakura Tribe Elder with this and then instantly sacrificing it for ramping. Continuing on the more conservative side of cards, we have Contact Other Plane, a simple card draw spell which allows you to draw and scry different amounts depending on your dice result. After that, Arcane Endeavor is a very powerful card which allows you to roll 2 dice and then draw cards equal to one of the results, and after that you get to cast a spell for free from your hand with a mana cost of the other result or less. Nevery's Puzzle Ward is an enchantment which allows you to passively gain dice rolls for buffing Wyll up, and whenever you roll the highest result that a die can have, you get to draw an additional card. The addition of scrying at each of your upkeeps also allows you to manipulate your top deck in order to draw the much needed removal spell or other card that you might need. Next up we have Simon Wild Magic Sorcerer, a creature who allows you to throw an additional d20 on each of your instant and sorcery spells as long as it costs 3 mana or more. Depending on the result, each player can draw a card, you can draw a card, or you get to copy the spell. And finishing this lineup, we have the Ancient Silver Dragon, a big 8/8 flying creature who allows you to roll a d20 whenever he connects with another player, and then you can draw cards equal to the result, and you have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. Of course, all that card draw is quite worthless if you don't have the mana to play any of the cards that you have drawn. So let's take a look at the cards that either ramp you or give you additional value. First up on this list we have one of my favorite cards ever, Bucknard's Everfull Purse, a 2 mana artifact which you can then tap for 1 mana to roll a d4, and then you get to create a number of treasure tokens equal to the result. After that, this card is passed around the table counterclockwise. In the worst case, you just simply exchange 1 generic mana for a treasure token which you can then later use for any color. And in the best case, which happens quite a lot with Wyll on the board, you ramp tremendously with this. Secondly, Component Pouch is another powerful ramp artifact. This one either allows you to tap it to roll a d20 and then put charge counters on it, depending on how good you rolled. Later you can again tap this artifact and remove 1 counter at a time, each being worth 2 mana of any color. Third up we have a really fun card in Vexing Puzzle Box. This artifact first up gains counters every time that you roll dice for any reason. The counters you get always being equal to the die result. You can then tap this artifact to either add 1 mana and just roll a d20 without any reason other than gaining counters. Or if you have 100 counters on this artifact, you can remove those counters and search your library for an artifact of your choice and just put it on the battlefield for free. Not providing any ramp, but still giving big value is the Wand of Wonder. This artifact allows you to tap it for 4 mana and then roll a d20. Each opponent then exiles cards from the top of the library until they hit an instant or sorcery card. Depending on the result on your dice, you get to cast either 1, 2 or all 3 of those cards for free. One of, if not the most powerful option in your deck is the Wizard Spellbook. This artifact can be tapped at sorcery speed to roll a d20. Along with this action, you have to also exile an instant or sorcery card from any graveyard. Depending on the result on your die, you get to either copy that freshly exiled card and you can then cast it, or you can copy and cast it for just paying 1 mana instead of the full cost. Or if you hit the big natural 20, you get to copy all the cards exiled with Wizard Spellbook and cast them for free. This one can be a real game ender. Or it can just simply provide some good graveyard hate. Also not contributing any mana ramp, but giving a lot of aggressive value is Maddening Hex, a enchantment curse which you can attach to any player of your choice. Whenever that enchanted player casts a non-creature spell, you get to roll a regular 6-sided die. The cursed player then takes damage equal to the result and attaches the Maddening Hex to another opponent at random. Finally, we have the most expensive card that I ever got, the Ancient Copper Dragon. A big flying creature which whenever it deals combat damage to a player, lets you roll a d20 and then create a number of treasure tokens equal to the result. Next, every deck needs at least some interaction. And in this deck we start off with Wyll's Reversal, a 3 mana instant which allows you to choose target spell or ability with one or more targets, then roll a d20 and add the power of the strongest creature you control to the result. Depending on which, you can either choose new targets for the spell or ability, or you get to do that and additionally copy the spell. Next to that we have Gale's Redirection. This 5 mana counter spell seems to be quite expensive, but for good reasons. First up, you exile target spell and then you roll a d20, adding that spell's mana value. Depending on the result, you get to cast it either for free or with mana of any color at a later time. This can also exile creature spells from this deck, as well as spells that read "this spell can't be countered", which makes this a counter spell against uncounterable spells. Next up, Scion of Stygia allows you to play it at any time with Flash. When it comes in, you get to roll a d20 and choose an opponent's creature. This creature is then tapped, and depending on the result, it might not untap in the next untap step. A similar effect, just a little bit bigger, comes with Cone of Cold, a sorcery with a d20 roll attached to it, which then taps all of your opponent's creatures, can additionally make them not untap for one turn, or you can even make all of the creatures come in tapped that they play on the next turn. Power of Persuasion is a really fun removal spell. First you choose a creature, roll a die, and then you either return it to its owner's hand, or they can choose between putting it on the top or bottom of the library, or you can even gain control of that creature until the end of your next turn. Of course, nothing goes over some good old-fashioned board wipes, like Thunderwave. First you roll a d20 and depending on your result you either deal 3 damage to each creature, or you can choose one of your own creatures to not take any damage from that, or you can just deal 6 damage to all of your opponent's creatures. And lastly, the most reliable way to get rid of a big board would be Reckless Endeavor. First you roll 2 12-sided die and then choose one result to be dealt as damage to all creatures, and then you get an amount of treasure tokens equal to the other result. Finally, for the last category regarding dice, we will look at possibilities to turn dice into aggression to actually win games. The first card on this list is Sword of Hours, a 2 mana equipment which can be equipped for 2 mana. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, it gains a +1/+1 counter, and whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage, you get to roll a d12 die, and then if the result is greater to the result, or if it is 12, you get to double all the +1/+1 counters on that creature. One more really useful equipment can be Goblin Morningstar, a 2 mana equipment which can be once again equipped for 2 mana, and it gives the equipped creature +1, +0 and Trample. Trample can then be used to either regain the initiative, to finish a player off with a big will, or if you have one of the Ancient Dragons out, you can then force some combat damage to get the die roll effect. Additionally, this equipment also lets you roll a die whenever it enters, to either create a 1/1 goblin, or to create that goblin and then instantly equip the Morningstar to the token. On the topic of goblins, we also have Swarming Goblins in here. This creature gives you another die roll on ETB and then creates a number of goblin tokens, which can be 1, 2 or 3 depending on your result. Iron Mastiff is a really aggressive card, which rolls a d20 whenever you attack, and depending on the result, you get to deal damage equal to its power either to yourself, to your opponent, or to each opponent. Chaos Drake is another really aggressive option. This one has great stats and abilities for its mana cost, but at the cost of having to attack each combat, and before you attack, each player has to roll a d20. Whoever rolls the highest cannot be attacked by the dragon this turn. The Dalkin Squirrel Wrecker is another really fun card in here. Whenever he enters, you have to roll 2 6-sided die, the results of which then make up his base power and base toughness. Delina Wild Mage is one of the strongest cards in this deck. Whenever she attacks, you get to choose another creature you control and then roll a d20. Depending on the result, you either create one tapped and attacking copy of that creature, which is not legendary, Or you get to do that and then roll again. This effect can escalate really quickly and can be used for way more than just doubling up on ETB effects. And lastly, a card that always gets my opponents to roll their eyes when I play it, the Earth Cult Elemental. On ETB, you once again roll a d20, and according to the result, either each player has to sacrifice a permanent, each opponent has to do so, or each opponent has to sacrifice 2 permanents of their choice. Before we move on from the topic of dice throws, let's take a look at all the cards that don't throw dice themselves, but give you more value whenever you do so. Starting with Critical Hit, a 2-mana instant spell which can give any creature double strike until end of turn. Additionally, whenever you roll a natural 20, you can return this card from your graveyard back to your hand. Another highly valuable card would be Barbarian Class. This enchantment enters at level 1 and then you can pump in more mana to have it gain additional abilities. At level 1, it adds 1 more dice roll to all of your rolls, effectively giving you double advantage should you have Wyll out. At 2nd level, every roll of the dice allows you to choose 1 creature to give it +2/+0 and menace until end of turn. And at level 3, all of your creatures have haste. With all of this dice throwing, Brazen Dwarf allows you to put out some consistent damage. On each roll of the die, this creature deals 1 damage to all opponents. On the other end of things, Wyll Trickster similarly also gives you value on each die roll, but instead of pure damage, this one gives you a 1/1 flying Fairy Dragon token on each roll. And the very last card that interacts with dice in any way would be Faraday Devil's Chosen, a Tiefling Warlock with the ability of gaining flying and menace until end of turn whenever you roll a die. And additionally, whenever you roll a 10 or higher, you get to draw a card. Before we get to the more generic cards, it's also worth to take a look at all the cards that support our goal of using ETB effects as the glue that holds our 2 strategies together. One very obvious way to do so would be blinking creatures, which Blur achieves nicely, also doubling as protection against target removal. Another way to blink your creatures would be Displacer Kitten, allowing you to blink one of your cards whenever you cast a non-creature spell. By now, Magic also has its fair share of ETB doublers. The first of which would be Starfield Vocalist, who is basically a Panharmonicon on legs, which is also in the deck by the way. Lastly, Virtue of Knowledge also allows you to double down on those ETB effects, this time in enchantment form. Even though Dungeons and Dice can achieve a lot of stuff on their own, there are sadly some generically good cards that just have to be in this deck. So let's take a look at those. First up on the list of commander staples are Lightning Greaves. This not only provides some much needed protection for Wyll, but it also allows you to give haste to some high impact creatures. Even though Tesseract the Seeker is the only planeswalker in this deck, he really pulls his weight. Untapping up to 2 target artifacts can be very valuable, and he also gives you the possibility of tutoring for your most valuable artifacts. Jeska's Wyll is a card so good and so well known, I don't think I have to tell you why it is good here. Both Brainstorm and Brain Search are great ways to draw a lot of cards and then recycle the cards that you don't need at the moment. Similarly, Mentor's Guidance synergizes quite well with the Warlock creature type that Wyll has. Of One Mind might not sound that good at 3 mana for draw 2, but since Wyll is a human creature and all the other creatures in your deck are non-humans, this spell almost always costs just 1 blue mana. With most of the available counterspells in this deck being a little bit on the more expensive side, an offer you can't refuse is a great, cheap alternative for a counterspell. But as we all know, running too many counterspells can make your opponents quite salty, so I like to run Arcane Denial instead of your regular counterspell, just so you give your opponent a little goodie in exchange for the counterspell. To me, the card draw that you get yourself is just a nice side effect. Obviously, there are hardly any decks that could pass up an Arcane Signet, and this deck for sure is not one of them. Also slotting into the category of generic ramp is the Talisman of Creativity, Izzet Signet, and a personal favorite of mine, the Moonsilver Key, which allows you to search your library for any artifact with a mana ability. And finally, another commander staple would be Solemn Simulacrum. And since its ramp is tied to another ETB effect, this one really earns its place in this deck. And this might be the point where some of you are confused where is the Sol Ring, which I can answer very easily. The short answer is my playgroup decided to ban Sol Ring at our table, in order to prevent games where one player gets a big breakaway start which leads to a big and boring archenemy game. And finally, the very last category that we will take a look at would be the lands, which are not all that interesting in this deck. The only cards worth mentioning here are the Den of the Bugbear, the Hall of Storm Giants, and Rogue's Passage. The two cutout lands only being here for flavor and because I pulled them myself from some booster packs, and Rogue's Passage can be nice to close out games. Other than that, there's a command tower in here, as well as all the blue and red dual lands that come in untapped that I could get my hands on. In the end, this deck comes out with a land count of just 32, which some of you might think is quite low, but with all the ramp artifacts and all the initiative cards which then allow you to search a basic land at the first step, this deck really does not need any more lands than that. Finally, with all of that out of the way, let's get right into the deep dive, where we will take a look at some combos that you might not have thought of while seeing the cards, as well as taking a look at a few rulings that I got wrong the first time I played this deck and that you also might have gotten wrong. First off, let's say we have Wyll and our Barbarian class out at the same time. We then play Feywild Trickster and roll a die with some random effect. Since both Wyll and the Barbarian class give us an advantage, we now instead roll 3 dice and then pick the highest result. But since those effects are replacement effects, this still just counts as rolling 1 or more dice. So it won't trigger Feywild Trickster multiple times, but just once instead, leaving us with just 1 Fairy Dragon token. On the other hand, the only card that does this differently in this deck would be the Vedalken Squirrel Whacker. This card lets you roll 2 6-sided die on ETB. But since the wording on the card specifically says roll a 6-sided die twice, this also counts as 2 separate dice trigger, leaving us with 2 Fairy Dragon tokens. Or if we have Wyll out, we could even roll 2 6-sided die twice and pick the highest result for both of those. And just like we get 2 Fairy Dragons out of it, this would also result in 2 +1/+1 counters on Wyll. Now let's take a look at one of the most insane and game-ending combos in this entire deck. Luckily, this combo just involves 2 cards, one being your commander Wyll, who should be easily accessible to you, and the other part of this combo being Delina Wild Mage. Let's once again read what Delina does exactly. Whenever Delina Wild Mage attacks, choose target creature you control, then roll a d20. With a result between 1 and 14, you create a tapped and attacking creature token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and it will be exiled at end of combat. But if you roll a 15 or higher, you create one of those tokens and then roll again instead. So let's go through what happens if we attack with Delina targeting our commander. First up, Wyll's replacement effect would make us roll 2 d20s and take the higher result. Additionally, since we are rolling dice, Wyll get a +1/+1 counter, making him a little bit bigger. Due to Wyll giving us the advantage, rolling a 15 or higher is still not guaranteed, but it is a lot more likely. We then create our first Wyll copy, which is not legendary, tapped and attacking. Then we roll again, but with now 2 Wylls on the board, we instead roll 3 dice and pick the highest result only. This die roll results in both Wylls getting a +1/+1 counter, as well as creating another Wyll token. Just for fun, let's say this die roll once again was a 15 or higher. This once again results in yet another Wyll token, which then will it even more likely to roll a 15 or higher, which then results in another Wyll token, and another Wyll token, and another Wyll token, and another one after that. And while each Wyll token that you create will come in as a small and meek 1/1, each of the previous Wyll tokens will get progressively bigger and bigger and bigger. Combining this with another card like Barbarian class, giving you one more advantage and the possibility of buffing one of your creatures with +2 attack on each die roll, pretty much guarantees you to win the game on the spot. Now, some of you might have noticed that Delina Wild Mage does not have a May effect. So, in theory, we are forced to continue this process forever, until we at some point roll a 14 or lower. But at some point, when you have enough Wylls out and enough damage on the board to just finish everyone all at once, you can just agree to just give you the win and not play it out. As it is with all probabilities, with infinite time, at some point each and every possibility should happen. So of course you could sit there and roll your dice a billion times until you manage to hit a 14 or lower a billion times in the row, but I don't think that anyone has time for that. Another combo that is not quite as insane but still very good presents itself when we combine Wyll with the Sword of Hours. Not only does this give Wyll an additional +1/+1 counter on the attack, but it also causes a die roll on combat damage, which then gives Wyll another +1/+1 counter, all of which will then most likely be doubled thanks to the advantage that Wyll provides, making him really big really quick. Another good use for such buffs like the Barbarian class or Sword of Hours buffs would be with your Iron Mastiff. Should you roll high enough, which is very likely, you essentially have a creature that, when it attacks, not only presents danger due to its high attack, but also deals its damage reliably or even twice. And in the most extreme case, you can literally just blow up all of your opponents at the same time. A very interesting piece of information that I just learned recently about has to do with the adventure side of the Virtue of Knowledge enchantment. This 2-mana instant spell allows you to copy target activated or triggered ability you control, and then you may choose new targets for the copy. For me, the first instinct was always to just copy any ETB effect that I wanted. This then often allowed me to take 2 dungeon steps at the same time with just one single initiative or venture into the dungeon ETB. But as it turns out, venturing into the dungeon only allows you to choose the path you want to take and the effect you want to use. This effect is then put on the stack as a triggered ability. And if you thought the combination of Wyll and Dungeon Delver, allowing you to trigger the Throne of the Dead Free 2 times at once, was disgusting enough, then I'm glad to inform you that you can use the Virtue of Knowledge adventure side, Ventress Visions, to target that triggered room ability on the stack to copy it once more. One more card that I grew really fond of over time would be Simon Wild Magic Sorcerer, whose only restriction is that you have to cast a instant or sorcery with mana value 3 or greater in order to trigger his effect. And as you might have noticed already, I of course try to include as many instant or sorceries of mana value 3 or greater as possible in this deck to trigger him as often as possible. But not only that, additionally there are a bunch of cards in this deck that allow you to cheat mana and cast more expensive spells for basically free or less cost. But notably, all of those cards still specify that those cards are still being casted. So cards like Wizard's Spellbook, Wand of Wonder, Gale's Redirection, Jeska's Will or Arcane Endeavor can all be used to get additional triggers out of Simon. Next, with one of the focuses of this deck being dungeons, one of the main goals of this deck is to just simply outvalue and outtempo your opponents with multiple triggers of the last Undercity step. And some of you might call it a first world problem, but I often ran into the issue of having my most valuable cards in hand already and not being able to cheat them out with the Throne of the Dead Free ability. And exactly this is the main reason for the inclusion of Brainstorm and Brain Search. With both those spells being instant speed and allowing you to manipulate the top of your deck, you can just simply take, let's say, your Ancient Copper Dragon from hand, put him back on top of your deck, and then just simply cheat him out with your Undercity ability. You're welcome. And for the final deep dive topic, I would like to take a look at Tezzeret the Seeker with you. Starting out with his +1 ability, you of course have seen that this deck has no shortage of high value artifacts which all have tap abilities. Untapping a Wizard's Spellbook to copy an additional spell each turn, or a Zarevok's Tome for more mana or for playing more free cards from the top of your deck, your Vexing Puzzle Box for more mana, or a Component Pouch which even gets 2 mana on each tap. Tezzeret is really flexible in this deck. His -X ability is even more powerful. While you might just search out any old ramp artifact with a starting loyalty of 4, the alternatives are even better. How about an early Panharmonicon, for example? Or a Zarevok's Tome, which also gives you the initiative. A Vexing Puzzle Box for gaining charges to search out another artifact later on. Or you can just get out your Solemn Simulacrum for a more permanent kind of ramp. Man, I love this deck. And I hope you're ready, because now it's time to take a look at this deck's MVP. Ladies and gentlemen, please hold on to your socks, because here comes the creature that is just as deadly as it is cute, the Displacer Kitten. For those of you who have not seen this coming, let's take a deeper look into what this creature can do. And even those among you who have seen this coming from miles away, I invite you to stay and listen, because how this deck can break this card might surprise even you. Let's start with the basics. The Displacer Kitten is a 4-mana creature for 3 generic and 1 blue mana. And even though its creature types are cat and beast, with its power and toughness of 2, it has the stat line of your typical bear creature, which makes me love it even more. Lastly, this creature has just one effect, called Avoidance. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get to exile up to 1 target non-permanent you control, and then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Or in short, playing non-creature spells allows you to blink stuff. Let's take a quick look at the ratio for this. With a deck list consisting of 32 lands, 25 creatures and 43 non-creature cards, the odds of having cards that can activate this Displacer Kitten are quite high. But just as many cards as there are for activating Displacer Kitten, there are just as many cards that Displacer Kitten can target. From our favorite Zed robot searching us more lands, to all of the ETB effects in our deck that can make us roll even more die and buff Wyll even more, or trigger more and more effects of cards like Feywild Trickster or Present Dwarf. But why stop there? Why not simply activate the initiative or venturing to the dungeon a bunch of times, giving us more and more dungeon steps, completing more and more dungeons and getting more and more value out of everything we do? Also keep in mind that we have a grand total of 3 ETB doublers in this deck, which could mean that even one single ETB almost clears an entire dungeon on itself, with Wyll and Dungeon Delver providing even more value for that. Or should you have no ETBs in range, maybe Blinking Tesseract might be valuable for you. That way you could search out multiple ramp artifacts or untap and use your most valuable artifacts multiple times per turn. And by now I hear you guys say, but Kletjas, that can't be all, right? And to that I say, of course not. We aren't even remotely done, my friends. My last example for the previous page being Tesseract, the only planeswalker in the deck, might have been a small hint for what is to come, because since the Displacer Kitten allows us to blink any non-permanent, why stop at creatures? What would happen if, let's say, we had a loot dispute out on the field? In that case, we would not only gain the initiative a bunch of times, but we would also gain a new treasure token for each time that loot dispute enters the battlefield, which, keep in mind, might be affected by another ETB doubler. So in addition to multiple initiative triggers for 1 ETB, we might also get multiple treasure tokens. Not to mention all the 5/5 dragon tokens that come out of this enchantment each time we finish a dungeon. But we might not always get lucky, and all the ETB doublers in the deck aren't guaranteed for you to have on the field. So let me present you an alternative in Sararok's Tome. Once you have the initiative and start blinking, you could theoretically, between each and every blink, tap the tome and gain 2 colorless mana for every blink. To which you might say, yeah, Kletjas, that's nice, but colorless mana is really not that impressive. And to do a lot of stuff, we still need a lot of colored mana pips, which is undoubtedly some valid criticism. But please let me raise the following point. Did I say that we are even remotely done yet? Because, of course no, this is just the beginning of something great. Let me reintroduce to you an old friend of mine, Wand of Wonder. Let's read together one final time what it does, shall we? Pay 4 generic mana and tap this artifact. Roll a d20. This d20 will later on determine the value for X in the following text. Each opponent exiles cards from the top of the library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. Then shuffles the rest into the library. You may cast up to X instant and or sorcery spells from among cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. And with die results from 1 to 9, 10 to 19 and 20, X is 1, 2 or 3 respectively. Please allow me to reiterate on the most important segments. In short, Wand of Wonder allows us to cast instants and sorceries for free. Now, let's see what Displacer Kitten wants us to cast in order to blink something. Would you look at that? It wants us to cast non-creature spells. And since rolling a d20 leads to an average result of 10.5, which then would become roughly 13.8 with any effect that grants us the advantage, this then leads to really good possibilities of at least getting 2 spells off of Wand of Wonder. And this in turn finally means that 2 spell casts can lead to 2 blinks, which in turn mean that blinking Zarok's Tome twice gives you 4 mana back. So the Wand of Wonder essentially paid for itself. And even though this was not our main focus with this combo, this also resulted in getting 2 dungeon steps by blinking the Tome. Now all that is left to do is to somehow untap the Wand of Wonder to restart this whole process all over again. For one, there are enough cheap spells in this deck to get another blink out of Displacer Kitten in order to blink the wand, untapping it. Another possible solution could be simply having Tesseract the Seeker out on the field. Using Tesseract's +1 ability then allows you to untap both the Tome and Wand of Wonder, with one final blink still being left for the Tome. Maybe you also splashed in a Stormkiln Artist into your version of this deck to generate additional treasure tokens on each spellcast. Also, don't forget that you are still getting dungeon steps while doing all of this. Getting some additional treasure tokens out of the Undercity, drawing cards, or just simply triggering the final step a bunch of times can be really devastating for your opponents. In short, this combination of cards easily creates a self-sustaining cycle of pure random chaos. Okay, enough about that. While this combo is really fun and can create a lot of chaos, it will most likely not win you the game on the spot. Unless, let's once again take a look at what the Undercity can do for us. After all, blinking all this initiative stuff has to be good for something. First of all, I don't have to repeat how devastatingly strong the Throne of the Dead Free can be. With some haste enablers being in this deck, you can easily find one of the ancient dragons and just go to town with it. Alternatively, finding any good ETB creature is also really valuable. Having double dungeon triggers and then cheat out another initiative card will instantly start this whole cycle all over again. Should you require more ramp or more mana in order to cast that big spell to get another blink out of Displacer Kitten, creating some treasure tokens might be worth your while. Also, don't underestimate the power of the Trap Room, especially in long drawn out games where a lot of damage has been dealt already. This simple room ability, dealing up to 10 damage to a single player, can be a huge game changer. And after that, going into the archives to draw an additional card or 2 will quickly allow you to refill your resources. It's not without a reason that people say draw a card are the 3 most powerful words that a magic card can read. Another nice and small combo with the Displacer Kitten can be Gale's Redirection. While this counter-like spell is quite expensive on its own, it still allows you to cast the countered spell at a later time yourself, potentially turning a single spell cast into 2 blinks. Lastly, let's take one final look at the most expensive artifact in this deck. At sorcery speed, Wizard's Spellbook allows you to tap it to exile target instant or sorcery card from any graveyard. You then roll a d20 and on anything other than a natural 20, you then get to cast a copy of the exiled spell, and the original still stays in exile. Over the course of a few rounds, this can allow you to build a big stack of exile spells under the Wizard's Spellbook. If you would then exile the Wizard's Spellbook, I don't think you could access any of those anymore. Since in the rulings it says if you have multiple copies of Wizard's Spellbook, each one will track its own list of exiled cards. So the idea here is not to blink the spellbook, but instead build up a big list of exiled cards and then just wait for the natural 20 to happen. This will then copy and cast all of the spells exiled with the spellbook, resulting in a pure explosion of flicker and blink effects. Thank you very much for sticking around this long. Before we end this video, here are a few statistics about this deck. First up, the mana curve, and secondly, the ratios of all different card types in this deck. If you would like to take a closer look at the deck yourself, I will also link my Moxfield deck list in the description down below. And just like that, it's over. I can hardly believe it myself. I just severely underestimated all the time that this video would take, from getting together all the images, the statistics, editing the whole stuff together, recording my voiceover, and all the other stuff that comes with creating a video. I'm just glad that I managed to do it, and I have to say I'm really quite happy with the end result. And I sincerely hope that I at least reached one of you out there and inspired you to give this deck or a similar build a try. And I would really love to get to read your experiences in the comments down below. Whether it be what your favorite commander deck of all time is, or how you started out with Magic as a whole, or even if you have any input on this deck list or any wishes for future deck lists or future videos, no matter the topic. In the end, all that I can say is thank you for sticking around, thank you for watching all throughout to the end, and I highly recommend giving this quintessential D&D deck a try. You will also hear from me again soon, next time with some Avatar The Last Airbender openings. And after that I have a 4-part surprise for you. If you don't want to miss it, if you liked this video, or if you just like me, then please feel free to share, like and subscribe. This has been Kletjas, till next time.